before we get started, it's important to know that we always recommend that your bicycle be professionally assembled. Or if you choose to follow this video and do home assembly, we recommend that a professional bicycle mechanic safety check your bicycle before riding. Now let's get started.
Let's assemble your Start 20. First, take some household scissors or something sharp and open up the box. Let's open up the parts box and see what's inside. In our parts box, we've got our left and right pedals, additional tools for assembly, our rear reflector, and some owner's manuals. This is a great time to review the owner's manual, especially if this is going to be your child's bike, to review it with your child as well. Now let's get to the assembly. Start by removing all the packaging material. Now, with the packaging removed, we can start by straightening out the fork and installing the handlebars. So just take the handlebars around here, and you're going to grab the fork by the stem, and looking down at it, you want to rotate it clockwise 90 degrees so that the brakes are in the front and all these cables are also in the front of the bike here. So I'm going to bring the handlebars around. The way that we're going to install these is so that all the cables are running in front of the bike. So in order from front to back here, we've got the front brake cable, the rear brake cable, followed by the gear cable. So I'm just going to set that down, but just remember that orientation. And now we're going to grab our 4mm Allen key and just remove the stem faceplate bolts. All right. Now, pick that handlebar back up again. Remember that brake and gear cable orientation. Everything should be freely running in front. Put that faceplate on. And then just start threading these in. So this is called knurling, and that's those lines on the handlebar, and you want that to be centered within the stem. You also want the angle of the brake levers to be about 45 degrees from the ground. And when you're tightening down this stem faceplate, you want there to be even space on the top and on the bottom of the faceplate so that it's not pinching on the top or the bottom. And these, you want to snug them up. They don't need to be gorilla tight, but they do need to be good and snug for safety. While we're here, this is a good time to move the reflector over. So I grab my Phillips screwdriver, and I'm just going to angle that reflector so it's perpendicular to the ground, and tighten it in place. Now we're ready to install the front wheel. But first, what we're going to do is open up the brake to fit that wheel in. So this is a V-brake, and this is called your brake noodle. And the brake noodle fits into the caliper of the V-brake right here. So to open the brake, we're just going to slide that forward and take that noodle out. Now grab the front wheel. So there should be 2 axle nuts on here, and underneath each axle nut, on each side, there's going to be 3 washers. All of these washers need to go on the outside of the fork. So I like to unthread these just enough so that the axle nuts are not coming off, but that we have plenty of space to fit this onto the fork. So once you're ready, just lift up the front of the bike and drop that fork right in place. So now before you go to tighten the axle nut, you want to make sure that these washers are properly in order on the outside of the fork. So it goes fork, 1 flat washer, and then we have a hooked washer. And that hooked washer needs to fit into this little slot in the bottom of the fork. And that's a safety function. And then after the hooked washer, we've got another flat washer, followed by the axle nut. Similarly on this side, we've got a flat washer and then a hooked washer that needs to fit into the fork, another flat washer, and our axle nut. So I like to get those, pretty close to tight by hand, but then it's really important to finish this off with our included 15mm wrench. And the reason I do this with the bike upright like this is that as I'm tightening these, I'm putting a little bit of weight on the bike, and that's making sure that the wheel is getting pushed all the way up and evenly into the dropouts of the fork so that it's not cocked to one side. So tighten that up firmly so that the tool makes an imprint in the palm of your hand, both sides. And now you can reattach the front brake. So see how I'm pulling the noodle with one hand and also pushing the caliper in, and then just using the other hand to guide that noodle back into place, like so. And then you can slide this dust cover back on. Now we can pop the kickstand down and rest the bike on it. Now let's install your seat. So grab your seat and seat post, open up the quick release here in the seat post clamp, and slide the seat in. So first you want to close the quick release, but you might not feel like it's quite tight enough. So with the quick release open, you can tighten this side by turning it clockwise. And then you want to do it a couple turns until it feels like it takes a little effort to close that. And there's no movement or play in the seat. And you want to sort this out so that the saddle height is appropriate for your child's height and leg extension, but it's easy to make those adjustments with the quick release. And always make sure it's straight. Now let's do the pedals. So grab your pedals and let's identify which one's right and which one's left. So they should have some stickers here on the outside of the pedal, R and L. But if you're missing a sticker, the left pedal always has some lines here on the spindle to identify it that aren't on the right pedal. So let's start with the right pedal. The right pedal is standard thread. So with our 15mm wrench at the ready, we're going to start by threading that one in clockwise. I do it as far as I can by hand. Goes a little quicker that way. And now I'm going to finish it off with the 15mm wrench. And these pedals do need to be very tight. So I'm holding onto the back wheel with the crank arm going forwards, and I'm turning this wrench down nice and firm so it creates an imprint in the palm of my hand. That's how I know it's nice and tight. Let's do the left side. So the left side can be a little bit confusing because it is reverse thread. That means that we're going to screw it in counterclockwise. Once again, I'm going to start it off just with my fingers. And now I'm going to finish it off with our 15mm wrench. With the crank arm forward and holding onto the rear wheel, I can put some effort in to make sure that's nice and tight and the tool is leaving an imprint in the palm of my hand. Let's install the rear reflector. In order to have full adjustability in the seat height, we're not going to have a reflector on the seat post, but instead it's going to mount here on the seat stay. So we've got all the parts we need to do that right here. So we're going to start with this mount and this little shim, little plastic shim. So I'm going to fit that shim inside the mount and then just put that right over the seat stay. And then you can see on the reflector itself, there's a side with some knurling on it that's designed to mate up to the mount. So just hold that in place up against it, run our bolt through from the outside, from the reflector side, to, there's actually a threaded nut that's inserted in that side of the mount. So now I'm just going to thread that in till it's snug, and that's all we need. Now that we've finished basic assembly of the bike, it's a great idea to go through and double check that all the bolts we touched and all the ones we didn't are nice and snug. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us. We're here 7 days a week, and the contact information is on your screen.